Do you know someone who constantly talks about massive life changes, starting a business, writing a book, finally getting into shape, and yet years go by and they haven't moved an inch? The easy assumption is that this person is simply lazy. But from a behavioral standpoint, that is rarely the case. The actual obstacle is the mind itself. Our brains are remarkably good at engineering complete physical stagnation, all while tricking us into feeling like we are being highly productive. This creates two distinct psychological profiles. On the left side of this model, the perpetual dreamer operates in a closed loop. They absorb information, simulate the work in their head, and go back to absorbing more information. On the right side, the consistent doer operates an open system. They take an input, force a physical action, and generate an external result. Breaking out of that closed loop requires identifying exactly where your brain is getting stuck and applying specific behavioral mechanics to force your ideas into reality. The first place people get trapped is in the planning phase, deep inside the mental realm. Dreamers tend to build their goals using incredibly broad, expansive images. They want success, they want freedom, they want a better future. But the human brain cannot act on vague desires. A broad concept offers no immediate behavioral command. So your mind feels intensely inspired, but your physical body has absolutely no idea what to do next. The doer solves this paralysis by aggressively extracting the idea out of the mental realm and forcing it into the physical world. They take that amorphous, shifting cloud of a dream and compress it downward until it becomes a single, visible, and strictly measurable next step. If your planning doesn't connect to a concrete physical action, it isn't planning. It is a mental simulation that feels like work while generating zero real-world progress. Once a goal is defined, actually starting the work triggers a second set of traps. The dreamer gets caught waiting for a burst of emotional inspiration, while simultaneously falling victim to the illusion of infinite time. When we assume that tomorrow, next week, or next month are always available, the brain eliminates all biological urgency. Because time is treated as an endless resource, action gets postponed indefinitely, and we rarely feel any panic about the delay. To counter this, the doer artificially constricts time. By setting immediate personal deadlines, they make any delay feel expensive. They also practice something called neutral mood execution. Instead of waiting to feel excited or mentally charged, they train themselves to start tasks when they feel absolutely nothing. Emotions fluctuate every day. If your progress depends entirely on your mood, it stalls the moment that motivation fades. Real initiation requires treating time as scarce and executing regardless of how you feel. Finally, we reach the hardest phase, sustaining the effort. This is where the physical reality of growth hits hard. It involves heavy friction, confusion, sheer repetition, and agonizingly slow results. Because the perpetual dreamer spends so much time visualizing the success, they expect the entire journey to feel inspiring. When they inevitably encounter frustration, they assume they are doing something wrong and they quit. The consistent doer takes the exact opposite approach. They actively anticipate the boredom. They expect the process to be highly unpleasant and irritating. By expecting that friction up front, they neutralize the psychological shock. This allows them to keep pushing forward, sustaining their physical effort even when months pass without any visible reward. Feeling completely stuck or irritated isn't a signal of failure. It is simply the mandatory physiological toll required to drag an idea out of your head and into the real world. This brings us to a major divergence in how these two groups think. The perpetual dreamer is always trying to answer the question, how do I get success? But the consistent doer asks a much more realistic question. Look at this graph. Desire will spike incredibly high on day one, but it inevitably crashes. The real question is, what level of repetition, boredom, and uncertainty can you tolerate consistently? You have to willingly trade the comfortable illusion of limitless time and endless inspiration for the highly uncomfortable reality of physical action. You need to stop talking, imagining, and researching in a continuous loop. The longer a goal stays trapped entirely inside your head, the more disconnected it becomes from actual behavior. To break the cycle, you have to violently lock it into the real world. Take exactly one physical, strictly measurable action toward your goal today. It doesn't matter how small it is, and it doesn't matter how boring or uninspired it feels. Just force external movement.